In the echoing vastness of space, where stars burned with ageless fury and galaxies spiraled in silent grace, Captain Alara Miles stood alone on the bridge of the HSS Retribution, gazing into the abyss. Her ship, a sleek vessel armed with the latest human ingenuity, drifted silently near the colossal structure of Etherian Space Station. Here, amidst the political currents of the galaxy, humanity's fate often hung by a slender thread, a thread now seemingly frayed by unseen forces. Ilara's heart pounded with a mix of dread and defiance. The recent mysterious attacks on human colonies whispered of betrayal, and the weight of impending doom pressed against her spirit, threatening to crush her resolve. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive ring encircling the dwarf star, its surface dotted with the lights of thousands of docked ships and the reflective gleam of vast transparent domes. Inside these domes, lush alien flora breathed alien perfumes into carefully conditioned air, crafting an atmosphere that was a testament to the Galactic Council's power and diversity. From the Retribution's bridge, Alara could see the busy traffic of ships, sleek diplomatic cruisers, bulky freight haulers, and nimble personal crafts, all converging here in a dance of cosmic proportions. Ilara's eyes, a piercing shade of blue reminiscent of her homeworld's oceans, reflected a myriad of stars as she adjusted the zoom on her viewport. Her face, usually calm and collected, betrayed a flicker of concern as another report of a vanished scout ship reached her console. These were not random acts of piracy. They were calculated strikes, meant to weaken and intimidate. But why? And more importantly, who would dare target humanity under the guise of shadow? The air on the bridge was thick with tension, the crew moving with purposeful haste, their expressions taut with the same worry that gnawed at her gut. As commander, it was her duty not only to lead but to inspire confidence in her crew, a task that grew heavier with each unexplained incident. The Retribution, with its advanced AI and arsenal, felt less like a ship and more like a guardian at the gates, watching over humanity's distant children. Ilara turned away from the viewport, her gaze sweeping over her crew, her family forged in stars and darkness. "Prepare for a full systems check," she commanded, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her heart. "I want every sensor and scanner running at maximum capacity. We're not just defending human space, we're defending our future." As the crew acknowledged her orders, Alara's mind raced with the possibilities of espionage, alien collusion, and the ever-looming threat of full-scale war. Each possibility led back to one place, the Galactic Council. It was time for Captain Miles to confront the galaxy's intricate web of alliances and betrayals head-on. She needed answers, and Etherian, a nexus of power and secrets, was where she would start her quest. Ilara's resolve hardened. She would protect her people and expose the betrayer no matter the cost. The survival of humanity in this vast, unforgiving universe depended on it. Captain Ilara Miles surveyed the holographic star map unfurled before her, constellations and systems pulsating with luminescence, each light a whisper of civilizations thriving in the silent void. The recent communications from human outposts had been ominous. Reports of shadowy assaults and disappearing vessels, spreading unease like a dark wave across humanity's extraterrestrial settlements. As these reports coalesced into a pattern of aggression, the nebulous threat slowly took a malignant form in Alara's mind. Each vanished ship, each silent colony, added urgency to her mission. The bridge of the HSS Retribution was a sanctuary of focused activity. Officers manned their stations, their fingers dancing over translucent touch panels, voices melding into a low, urgent murmur. The air was charged with a palpable tension, the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting. Alara's own gaze was like steel as she pinpointed the locations of the incidents, her mind racing to connect the dots that seemed increasingly interwoven with the Galactic Council's intricate politics. Ambassador Threx, a figure of both reverence and suspicion, loomed large in her thoughts. His recent speeches at the council, veiled in diplomacy but edged with an unspoken threat, hinted at deep-seated animosities towards humanity's burgeoning influence. Threx's public demeanor was impeccable, his words chosen with care, yet Alara sensed the danger lurking beneath his smooth orations and sharp, calculating eyes. The captain turned away from the star map, her decision made. "Lieutenant Harrow, set a course for the Cygnus sector," she ordered, her voice a calm command cutting through the ambient hum of the bridge. "It's time we shed some light on these shadows." As the Retribution slipped into hyperspace, streaks of starlight bending around its sleek hull, the crew braced themselves for the uncertainties of the sector. The Cygnus sector, a sprawl of mining colonies and research outposts, had been hardest hit by the mysterious attacks. It was a region of space where the political lines between alien races blurred, a frontier where human resilience was both tested and tempered. Upon arrival, the scene was grim. A mining colony on Cygnus IV had been struck, its distress signals cut abruptly, leaving only the haunting silence of space. The colony, once a bustling hub of ore processing and trade, now lay in ruins, its structures breached and atmosphere venting into the void. Alara led a team of her best officers through the debris, their suits' lights piercing the darkness of abandoned corridors. The devastation was not just physical but deeply personal. Every shattered window, every lifeless hallway spoke of lives interrupted, of dreams dispersed like the very air they once breathed. As they moved through the colony, evidence of sabotage was clear, systems expertly disabled, defensive measures circumvented with terrifying precision. Among the wreckage, Alara found a datapad, its screen flickering weakly. With a skilled touch, she accessed its last recorded messages, a plea for help, a warning of an impending attack, and then nothing. The final message froze her blood. It mentioned a traitor within, someone who knew the colony's defenses intimately. The betrayal cut deeper than the cold of space, and as Alara's team gathered around her, their faces grim, the captain felt a resolve hardening within her. This was no random act of piracy. This was a calculated move in a larger game, one that threatened the very fabric of human expansion. As the Retribution left Cygnus IV behind, the pieces of the puzzle began falling into place, each one pointing back towards the Galactic Council and the enigmatic Threx. Alara knew that confronting such a powerful adversary required not just strength but cunning, and an alliance from within the Council itself. The shadows over humanity were deepening, but Captain Alara Miles was determined to drag them into the light, whatever the cost. The survival of her people was not just her duty, it was a call to arms, and she would answer it with the full might of the HSS Retribution. Her heart was a beacon in the dark, guiding her through the storm that was surely coming. The vastness of space often held a deceptive calm, a silence that masked the currents of conflict swirling beneath its serene facade. Captain Alara Miles felt this acutely as the HSS Retribution cruised through the star-lit corridors between planets, her mind constantly turning over the clues they had gathered. Each piece seemed to edge them closer to a conspiracy that could unravel the tenuous peace keeping the galaxy's myriad species in check. Alara's command center was a hive of activity, the air alive with the electric hum of machinery, and the low buzz of her crew's communications. The strategic holograms displayed across the central table showed troop movements and trade routes, highlighting the sectors where the mysterious attacks had increased in both frequency and ferocity. With every report that came in, the pattern grew clearer, yet the orchestrator remained shrouded in mystery. The mission ahead was fraught with peril, a delicate dance of diplomacy and espionage. Alara had selected a team of her most trusted officers for a series of covert operations across key locations. These missions were dual-purpose: gather more intelligence and test the waters of allegiance among the other species within the Galactic Council. If Threx was indeed stirring unrest, Alara needed to know who she could trust. Prepare to dock at the neutral station of Vortex Haven, Alara instructed her navigator, her voice steady but her gut tight with tension. Vortex Haven was a bustling trade hub located at the edge of neutral space, a place where information was as valuable as the rarest ore. It was also a melting pot of cultures and species, a place where allegiances were negotiated in shadowed corners and loyalty was as changeable as the winds of the moons. As they approached, the station loomed large against the backdrop of a swirling gas giant, its rings casting wide bands of shadow over the docking ports. The station was a sphere of metal and glass, spinning slowly to generate gravity, its surface dotted with the lights of thousands of windows and the neon glows of countless advertisements. Once docked, Alara and her team disembarked in civilian attire, their identities cloaked by the nondescript garb of traders. They split up, blending into the crowd of beings that thronged the station's market district. Alara's heart raced as she passed stalls selling exotic spices from the outer rim, textiles woven by the insectoid Iltherians, and technology so advanced it seemed like magic to the untrained eye. Her destination was a quiet cafe, tucked away in the older sector of the station, a place known among the intelligence community as a haven for information brokers. The air inside was thick with the aroma of strong brews and the murkier scent of clandestine deals. Alara slid into a booth, her back to the wall, and waited. She didn't have to wait long. A figure approached, its movements fluid, its features obscured by a hood. "Captain Miles," it greeted, its voice a modulated neutral tone, designed to prevent identification. "Let's skip the formalities," Alara responded curtly. "What do you know about the attacks on human colonies?" The figure slid a data chip across the table. "Everything you need to know about who's moving what and where. But the real question isn't what, Captain, it's who and why." Alara's fingers closed around the chip, a lifeline thrown in turbulent waters. "And what's the price for this clarity?" "Watch your back, Captain," the figure whispered, almost compassionately. "Some truths cut deeper than knives. And remember, not all enemies wield weapons, some wield words and laws." With that cryptic warning, the figure vanished into the throng of the station. Alara sat back, her mind racing. The data chip held answers, but also more questions. Who else was involved? How deep did the betrayal go? And could she maneuver through this web of deceit before it ensnared her completely? As Alara rejoined her team, her resolve hardened like the hull of the Retribution. They returned to the ship, the data chip burning a hole in her pocket, like a star about to go supernova. This was more than espionage. It was a fight for the soul of the galaxy. And Alara Miles was not about to let the darkness win. Captain Alara Miles returned to the bridge of the HSS Retribution, the data chip containing a galaxy's worth of secrets secured within her pocket. As she entered, the somber mood of her crew reflected the gravity of their situation. Their mission had now transcended mere survival. It had become a delicate game of intergalactic politics and espionage. The Retribution resumed its orbit around the neutral station Vortex Haven, serving as their temporary command post in the shadows of the galaxy. Alara inserted the chip into her console, her fingers hovering with hesitance before she committed to unveiling the potentially devastating truths hidden within. As data streamed across the screen, patterns emerged, routes of smuggled weapons, encrypted communications between unknown factions, and damning financial transactions that traced back to the highest echelons of the Galactic Council. Among the tangled web of deceit, one thread was consistent: Threx's involvement in manipulating the Council's directives to subtly force humanity into a corner, isolated and vulnerable. With a heavy heart, Alara turned to her communications officer. "Arrange a secure channel to Ambassador Rintel of the Sebri species. It's time we test the waters of our so-called allies." Rintel, a towering figure with translucent skin that shimmered like the surface of a pond touched by wind, appeared on the screen. His eyes, large and unblinking, radiated a calm intelligence. "Captain Miles, to what do I owe the pleasure?" he inquired, his voice a soothing balm amidst the chaos. Alara was direct. "Ambassador, I believe you are aware of the recent incidents plaguing our colonies. I have reason to believe there is a conspiracy at play, threatening not just humanity, but the stability of our entire council." Rintel's eyes narrowed slightly, a ripple of tension passing through his form. "Go on," he prompted, intrigue laced in his tone. Elara continued, outlining the evidence without revealing her sources. I seek your counsel, and perhaps your support. Humanity wishes no conflict, but we will defend our sovereignty and our place within the council. The Sebri ambassador was silent for a moment, processing the gravity of her words. Captain, your concerns are not unfounded, he finally said. I too have noticed irregularities in council activities. Let us meet in person to discuss how we might address these shadows. Elara agreed, and plans were set for a discreet meeting on a neutral planet within the Orion Belt, a locale known for its privacy due to the dense asteroid fields that scrambled most scanning technologies. Upon arrival, the meeting place was a stark contrast to the bustling energy of Vortex Haven. The planet was barren, its surface a tapestry of shadows and light cast by the asteroids above. The meeting was to occur in an abandoned outpost, long forgotten by most of the galaxy. As Elara's shuttle landed, her team secured the perimeter. Inside the outpost, the air was thick with the dust of ages, the silence a stark reminder of the isolation they all felt in their struggle against unseen enemies. Ambassador Rental was already there, his form less radiant in the dim light, yet no less imposing. Captain Miles, he greeted, his voice echoing slightly in the empty halls. They sat across from each other at an old metal table, the surface pitted with the scars of forgotten conflicts. Elara laid out the evidence she had gathered, her voice firm yet tinged with the burden of her duty. Rental listened intently, his face unreadable. After she finished, he leaned back, his sigh resonating softly in the quiet. This is troubling indeed. Thrix has always been a cunning adversary. But this is something else. Elara watched him, trying to read any sign of deceit. Can I count on your support, Ambassador? Rental's eyes met hers, a storm of thoughts swirling within. You can, Captain. But be wary. We tread on a path riddled with peril. We must act wisely, or we risk not just confrontation but a galactic upheaval. With a mutual understanding of the stakes, they strategized their next moves. The alliance between human and Sebri, now a beacon of hope against the gathering storm. As Elara departed the outpost, the weight of the galaxy seemed both heavier and more bearable. She was not alone in her fight. Light flickered in the darkness, a sign that unity might yet overcome division. The journey back to the Retribution felt longer than usual for Captain Elara Miles. Her mind buzzed with the strategies devised with Ambassador Rental, each one a delicate step on the razor's edge of diplomacy and subterfuge. As the ship loomed into view, its metallic hull reflecting the cold, distant light of stars, Elara felt a rare moment of solace in its familiarity. Upon entering the bridge, the weight of command settled back onto her shoulders. She nodded to her crew, a silent acknowledgement of the risks they were about to undertake. Prepare for the next phase, she instructed, her voice calm but carrying an underlying urgency. The crew's responses were swift, a testament to their unwavering commitment. With the alliance with the Sebri tentatively in place, Elara knew that exposing Threx required irrefutable evidence that could not be ignored by the Galactic Council. The data chip's secrets were the key, but they needed more, direct testimony from inside Threx's inner circle. The plan was risky. They would intercept a diplomatic envoy known to be close to Threx, using a secluded sector of space where the Retribution could remain hidden. The operation required precision and a bit of luck. As the Retribution slid silently into the shadow of a derelict space station, the chosen ambush spot, the tension among the crew was palpable. Elara stood by the main console, her eyes fixed on the screen displaying the approaching envoy's ship, a sleek vessel that spoke of wealth and power. Engage cloaking device, and stand by for my signal. Elara commanded. The ship complied, fading into the cosmic background as if it were a ghost. The moment the envoy's ship entered the designated area, Elara gave the order. The Retribution sprang to life, its systems coming online in a silent, deadly ballet of technology. The envoy's ship was caught off guard, its shields compromised before it could mount a defense. We mean you no harm, Alara broadcasted to the captured vessel, her tone firm. "But we require your cooperation." A tense hour passed before the envoy agreed to talk. Under the watchful eyes of Alara's security team, the envoy, a dignified being with sharp features and calculating eyes, was escorted to the interrogation room aboard the Retribution. "I am Captain Alara Miles," she began, "and you are in a position to help prevent a major crisis affecting the entire galaxy." The envoy's eyes narrowed, weighing his options. "What do you want from me?" "Information about Threx's plans and his manipulation of the Council," Alara replied. "Help us, and we assure your safety and a fair hearing before the Council." Negotiations were tense, filled with veiled threats and promises. Finally, the envoy yielded, swayed by the combination of Alara's resolve and the grim reality of his situation. His testimony was recorded, a digital confession detailing Threx's ambitious scheme to incite war among the stars, seeing humans and other vulnerable species as mere pawns in his quest for power. With the evidence secured, Alara felt a momentary triumph, but it was overshadowed by the task still ahead. The evidence had to be presented to the Galactic Council, and Threx would be there, powerful and dangerous. As the Retribution set course for the Galactic Council's headquarters, Alara knew the real battle was just beginning. Her resolve was firm, but the path forward was fraught with uncertainty. In her heart, she carried the weight of her crew's trust and the fate of countless lives. The Retribution cut through space, a lone sentinel against the backdrop of a galaxy teeming with hidden threats and fragile alliances. Alara stood at the bridge, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead, ready to face whatever challenges came next. The fight for justice was far from over, but she was not alone, and the light of truth once ignited would be hard to extinguish. The HSS Retribution approached the massive structure of the Galactic Council headquarters, a monumental station orbiting a peaceful blue giant star. Its vast, sprawling complexes were a testament to the galaxy's unity and diversity, housing representatives from thousands of planets and species. Yet, beneath its harmonious exterior, a storm was brewing, one that Captain Alara Miles was about to unleash. The council was in session, a circular chamber filled with delegates seated in tiered rows, each member a representative of their species' interests within the galactic tapestry. The walls were adorned with holographic projections of the galaxy, symbolizing their collective responsibility. Alara, dressed in her formal uniform, her medals glistening subtly under the chamber lights, entered with her crew. They carried with them the aura of those who had traveled through the darkest reaches of space, bearing truths that could either mend or tear apart the fragile threads of galactic peace. As she stepped to the podium, a hush fell over the room. All eyes were on her, some filled with curiosity, others with suspicion. Threx was there too, his gaze sharp and calculating, his demeanor that of a predator poised for the kill. "Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed beings of the council," Alara began, her voice echoing through the chamber with clarity and strength. "We stand at a precipice, where the actions we take will decide the fate not just of humanity, but of this entire council and the peace it upholds." She continued, detailing the incidents that had plagued human colonies, each word supported by irrefutable evidence projected behind her, images of attacked outposts, intercepted communications, financial records, and the testimony of the envoy. The data painted a clear picture of Threx's manipulation and his dangerous ambitions. Threx stood, his voice booming as he attempted to dismiss the evidence. "These are baseless accusations designed to sow discord and weaken our unity." Alara faced him squarely, her resolve as unyielding as the hull of the Retribution. "Is the truth discord, Ambassador Threx, or does it merely inconvenience your plans?" The debate grew heated, with representatives from various factions chiming in, the chamber becoming a vortex of anger, confusion, and revelation. Just as the council seemed on the brink of chaos, an urgent message arrived. A fleet, unidentified but massive, was approaching the station. Alara's heart sank. She knew Threx had planned a final desperate move to seize control. She acted swiftly. "This is not just a political maneuver. It's an act of war," she declared, signaling her crew. Outside, the Retribution and a few allied ships moved to intercept the incoming fleet. The council chamber turned to the external feeds, watching in real time as the battle unfolded. Alara's ship, agile and fierce, danced between the behemoths of Threx's secret fleet, her crew working in perfect unison to deflect and strike back. The battle was intense, each explosion a punctuation in the narrative Alara had laid before the council. Amidst the chaos, she saw an opening, a path to Threx's flagship. With precise maneuvers and the collective efforts of her allied ships, they managed to disable the flagship, capturing Threx in the process. Back in the council chamber, as the last of Threx's ships were subdued, a profound silence settled. Alara returned to the podium, Threx now in restraints beside her. "This is the peace he promised us," she said, gesturing to the scene of battle still displayed behind her. "A peace built on subterfuge and domination." The evidence and the spectacle of the attempted coup left no room for doubt. One by one, the council members voiced their support for Alara and the need for a thorough overhaul of their governance to prevent such betrayals. As the session concluded, with Threx being led away and measures being put in place to ensure greater transparency and cooperation, Alara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The battle was won, but the war for lasting peace and justice had just begun. The HSS Retribution, damaged but dignified, stood guard outside the council station, a reminder of the vigilance required to protect truth and unity in a galaxy full of shadows. After the tumultuous events at the Galactic Council, the HSS Retribution limped away from the battlefield, scarred but victorious. Captain Alara Miles watched from the bridge, as the stars beyond seemed to flicker with a renewed sense of purpose. The council's session had ended with significant resolutions. Threx's machinations had been laid bare, and a collective sigh of relief and resolve echoed through the chambers of governance. Yet, for Alara the real work was just beginning. The victory, though sweet, had opened up new channels of responsibility and alliances that needed nurturing. The political landscape of the galaxy had shifted, and the Retribution's role had evolved from enforcer to guardian and diplomat. As repairs were underway, Alara convened a meeting with her senior staff in the war room, a circular chamber lined with screens displaying the galaxy's sectors. The mood was one of cautious optimism. "We've been given a unique opportunity," Alara started, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her trusted crew. "The council is willing to reform, but we must foster these new alliances. Trust is fragile. We need to solidify it." The first step was a diplomatic tour to the worlds most affected by Threx's conspiracies. These were worlds on the fringes of the council's influence, where distrust of centralized power ran deep, and the wounds of betrayal were still fresh. The Retribution's first stop was the aquatic world of Hydros V, where the inhabitants, a reclusive amphibious race known as the Hydronians, had been covertly armed by Threx. The planet was a beautiful tapestry of blues and greens, with vast oceans and floating cities interconnected by web-like structures. Alara met with the Hydronian Council under the soft glow of bioluminescent algae. Their leader, a dignified elder named Silas, with translucent skin and deep, oceanic eyes, was initially skeptical. "The Galactic Council has long overlooked the outer sectors," he stated, his voice a deep echo. "Why should we trust this newfound commitment?" Alara understood his reservations. She spoke earnestly. "Because, like you, we have felt the sting of deception. We offer not oversight, but partnership. Let us aid in healing the wounds Threx has inflicted." The negotiations were delicate, but Alara's sincerity and the visible presence of the Retribution's crew, who assisted in repairing damages and restoring local systems, gradually wore down the barriers of mistrust. By the time they left Hydros V, a treaty of mutual cooperation was signed, a first step towards a united front. The tour continued, each stop built upon the last, from the mining colonies of Asterion 9 to the energy farms of Solara Prime. The retribution was more than an envoy. It was a symbol of hope, a tangible promise that the Council's protection and prosperity were for all, not just the inner systems. Alara watched these alliances form, like stars being born out of the cosmic dust. At each destination, her crew left behind a piece of themselves, whether through shared knowledge, labor, or the simple act of listening, a commodity so rare in the vastness of space. The culmination of their efforts was a summit held on the neutral station Vortex Haven, where representatives of the new allies gathered to discuss the future. The atmosphere was vibrant, a collage of languages and colors, each delegate eager to voice their aspirations and concerns. Alara stood at the summit's opening, the myriad faces before her a mosaic of the galaxy's diversity. "Today we chart a new course," she declared, her voice resonating with the weight of their shared dreams. "One where no world is left in shadow, where no voice is too distant to be heard, and where trust is the cornerstone of our unity." Applause filled the chamber, not just for her words, but for the promise they held. As the summit progressed, plans were laid and foundations built for a coalition that would operate transparently, with representatives from all sectors, including the newly allied worlds. As the retribution prepared to depart from Vortex Haven, Alara stood once more on the bridge, looking out at the cosmos. The galaxy remained a place of infinite mysteries and challenges, but for now it felt a little smaller, a little more like home. With the stars as their witness, the crew of the retribution sailed forth, guardians of a new era of peace and partnership. They were no longer just soldiers. They were builders of bridges across the starry expanse. As the HSS Retribution cruised away from Vortex Haven, the shimmering space station receded into the backdrop of a vast, star-studded cosmos. The vessel, now not just a symbol of human resilience but a beacon of new beginnings, carried a crew whose spirits were buoyed by the successes of their diplomatic missions. Captain Alara Miles stood at the helm, her eyes reflecting the starlight, her heart full of both pride and the sobering awareness of the road ahead. The galaxy was changing. The Council's old guard was being reshaped, infused with fresh voices from the fringes, voices that had been silent for too long. Alara knew that true change was tumultuous, a path fraught with challenges as numerous as the stars. But as she watched her crew, their faces etched with the light of new stars and new hopes, she felt ready to meet those challenges head-on. Their journey back to Earth was to be a triumphant one. The planet, blue and swirling with white clouds, appeared on the main screen as the retribution approached. News of their diplomatic victories had traveled ahead of them, and as the ship entered Earth's orbit, it was met with the fanfare of a world eager to welcome heroes who had ventured beyond the unknown to unite a galaxy. Alara stepped onto the tarmac to a hero's welcome. The air was filled with the cheers of crowds and the salutes of dignitaries. Earth, with all its beauty and complexity, felt grounding, a reminder of what they had all been fighting for. Among the crowd, Alara spotted faces she knew, people who had supported her journey from the start. Their eyes shone with pride and relief at the safe return of their champions. The celebrations were grand, but the true work took place in the days that followed. Alara was invited to speak before the United Nations, where she narrated the tale of their odyssey across the stars. Her speech was not just a recount of battles fought and alliances forged. It was a call to action, an invitation to the people of Earth to step forward into their role as galactic citizens with responsibility and courage. "We stand at the dawn of a new era," Alara proclaimed, her voice echoing in the grand hall. "An era where humanity does not just reach for the stars but takes its place among them, as equals, as leaders and as peacemakers. Let us be as brave in our councils as we are in our explorations, and let us lead, not by the might of our warships, but by the strength of our principles." The applause that followed was not just for her, but for the ideal she presented, an ideal of a united galaxy where Earth played a pivotal role in fostering peace and progress. In the weeks that followed, Alara worked closely with Earth's leaders to establish the newly formed Galactic Coalition, ensuring that the alliances formed in space were reflected in the policies and strategies of Earth's own governance. The coalition was not just a peacekeeping body, but a forum for cultural exchange, technological advancement, and mutual development. As Alara watched the Coalition's first assembly, a gathering of diverse beings from across the galaxy, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The discussions were lively, filled with the promise of joint ventures in science, trade, and education. Earth had become a central stage where the future of the galaxy was being scripted. The story of the Retribution and its crew had become a legend, a beacon for those who dared to dream of a better future. As Alara retired from her command, passing the torch to the next generation of explorers and diplomats, she knew that her legacy, and that of her crew, was secure. Standing before a window in her home, looking out at the quiet beauty of a sunset, Alara felt a peace she hadn't known in years. The galaxy spun on, worlds turning, stars burning, each light a story, each story a part of the tapestry they had all woven together.